Mega Man 5 for the NES. Meh. And I mean meh. It's hard for me to think about this one because I honestly don't know what to think about this one. On the one hand, it plays like every other Mega Man that came before, so the base gameplay is still relatively solid and the presentation is still top-notch stuff. On the other hand, the stuff that was changed around or added feels like this game was a step forward and a step back, effectively cancelling each other out. By the time Mega Man 4 came around, people were pretty much tired of Mega Man in general, since it had roughly played the same way for virtually 4 games now, not counting the Game Boy releases and the awful games released on MS-DOS. And while 4, in my opinion, was the most solid refinement that the series would ever get, even though some may think otherwise, it was nonetheless a drop-off point for many people who were hoping for something new in the Mega Man series. And so Capcom tried to change a few things in Mega Man 5, to mixed results. Again, it's still a solid Mega Man game and a good game in general, but it's not quite as good by the standards that early games have established, or so people say. The story goes that Proto Man has gone crazy and kidnapped Dr. Light for some reason, and now it's up to Mega Man to rescue his creator and figure out what's up with Proto Man. And of course, we all know what happens from here, and if you don't, you clearly haven't played a Mega Man game before. If you've played past Mega Man games, then you already know the drill here. You pick a stage, 1 of 8, you fight through the stage, you fight and defeat the Robot Master to gain his weapon. Lather, rinse, and repeat. Mega Man 5 maintains the formula for the most part, and controls are still responsive but they feel tight. Pretty much what you expect from a Mega Man game by this point. Of course, the 5th go-around of what is essentially the exact same play mechanics is obviously getting a bit stale, so Capcom made some changes and additions to make the game less stale, which it did accomplish for better or worse. First thing they did is modify the Mega Buster, and apparently feeling that the Buster in Mega Man 4 was a bit overpowering somehow, they made it worse. Sure, you could still charge your shots, and it still does fairly good damage, and they actually changed the shot so it's a little wider, and that's the look it would stick with for the next few games. But there's an added caveat to the Buster that you lose your charge whenever you get hit. That means you'll have to be extra careful if you're holding a charge for long periods of time, because one hit will cause you to lose that charge. I don't mind this actually, it's annoying at times, much more than I would like, but I can understand the possible intent behind this move. Of course, when they brought classic Mega Man to 16 bits in Mega Man 7, this handicap was removed from the Buster. It's since returned in Mega Man 9 when you play as Proto Man. Rush the Dog has undergone some similar changes. The Rush Marine adapter is dropped, never to be seen again. Not much use for it anyways. And the familiar, ever so reliable Rush Coil has been replaced with a new variant which isn't reliable so much, it kind of sucks to be honest with you. Whereas the old coil was a springboard that propelled Mega Man to higher ground, the new coil propelled Rush to higher ground whenever Mega Man hopped on, and will be required to hop off to reach those higher grounds. It's a needless, cumbersome changeover, and a failed attempt at mimicking a double jump ability that doesn't really improve gameplay all that much. Oh well, at least they didn't change Rush Jet, which acts in the same manner as Mega Man 4. Constant forward motion with vertical height control, for better or worse. In addition to the butchered Rush Coil and a toned down Mega Buster, you also had the ability to gain 2 new abilities. The Super Arrow, which is basically a suction arrow that sticks to walls and allow Mega Man to use them as temporary platforms, and a new bird type helper called Beat, which can be used to attack any enemy on screen, including bosses. These don't really add much to the proceedings, but Beat does become a recurring ally in the Mega Menagerie, and he can be useful at times, so there you go. While you can obtain the Super Arrow by defeating a Robot Master, Beat is only available once you collect the 8 circuit plates scattered about, 1 per level, that spell out Mega Man 5. Some of these are in plain sight while others are not. It adds a bit of a side quest element for those who actually want a bird thing. All things considered, Mega Man 5 does play similarly enough from the previous games, and on a whole, it's your run-of-the-mill Mega Man adventure. Fairly challenging, but not too difficult that you'll want to give up. The levels themselves are actually quite interesting, and the gimmicks on certain levels does give Mega Man 5 some unique moments that raises its stock a bit. In certain portions of the Gravity Man level, for example, you'll be upside down, which is actually kind of cool. In fact, the fight with Gravity Man is also rather fun with the fidgety gravity taking place. It's one of the few bright and unique moments in Mega Man 5. In Wave Man's stage, you're riding a jet ski and shooting down enemies. And during this segment, you cannot pause or switch weapons, which is uncool, but it's different. In Starman stage, you're in space, which means you'll jump high all throughout the stage. Funny how he couldn't jump this high in Gemini Man stage in Mega Man 3 unless he was underwater. Logic, ladies and gentlemen! There is no place for it in video games. Mega Man 5 is somewhat moderately challenging. There's a few trouble spots here and there, as well as a number of leaps of fate that you'll have to do in long drops, but long-time Mega Man players shouldn't have too much trouble conquering this one. The basic pea shooter shots do slightly more damage here than in other games, but this is only a minor thing. If anything, Mega Man 5's difficulty is on par with the difficulty curve of the past couple Mega Man games, possessing some moments of frustration here and there, but it's definitely beatable. I doubt any Mega Man game is going to get as nail-grindingly hard as the original, unless they bring back all the defects from that game. Visually speaking, well, they added a slight hint of black on the back of Mega Man's helmet when he's climbing ladders. But other than that, it's the same sprite set that's been used game after game after game after game. You know what I mean. Today, this is widely considered to be a classic pixel art style, but I could have imagined the reaction back then when players were controlling the same Mega Man sprite, facing the same Dr. Wily sprite, sorry if I spoiled the game for anybody, and a brief encounter with the same Proto Man sprite who has been reduced to 4 frames total in this game, that's been used for 6 games now, including the 2 Game Boy entries. Regardless of the series' blatant reuse of roughly 7-year-old sprite sets for its main protagonist, Mega Man 5 manages to retain the same graphical style and flair of the previous games, and for the most part, the game still looks good and clean. While it's sort of understandable that Capcom wouldn't want to mess with what works, it seems rather daunting at the time that the series would never change its look, whereas other NES franchises would evolve in terms of its graphical appearance. Despite the staleness factor, it looks good and there isn't as much flicker as previous entries, although don't get me wrong, it's still there. Also, like I said before, they changed the buster shot, the charge shot, to be bigger, a form it would assume throughout the various Mega Man games and the spin-off series, which is a rather nice addition. Mega Man 5's soundtrack feels more like an extension or a derivative of Mega Man 3's soundtrack. The music in both games have somewhat of a similar flavor, that you could swap songs between the 2 games and they still fit. That having been said, the music in Mega Man 5 maintains the top-notch efforts of past games and contains a good number of memorable bits. The sound effects in this game are on par with its predecessors, not all that different. There's some audio changes, some subtle changes here and there. When you destroy an enemy, it emits a different sound than when you would normally hit it. But all in all, it's more the same, nothing wrong with that actually. If something works, then, meh. Things have definitely peaked by the time we got to Mega Man 5, which is still a very solid and very enjoyable Mega Man adventure. I still enjoy it, because it's Mega Man and all that. But in the grand scheme of things, Mega Man 5 feels like a weaker entry in the NES run, quite possibly due to the sense of deja vu that emanates from the gameplay, and then there's a couple questionable changes somewhat that brings the package down ever so slightly down a notch or 2. Even so, this isn't a terrible or even a bad game. On the contrary, Mega Man 5 does have its moments of greatness at certain points in the game. It makes its mark on the franchise, and it's overall a fairly solid Mega offering on the NES. It still maintains the core principles of the series, and it's a fine game in its own right. So if you haven't played Mega Man 5, it's worth a look despite its lesser parts.